Okay, Kathy McCoy,
Present.
Gary Hilgendorf, Mark Helwig, Marshall Savitsky, Elaine Smith, Katie Bellinger,
I'm here.
Reed Ryan, or Ryan Reed, sorry about that, Tweed Schuman, Lorraine Gouget, Andy Alvarado, Bruce Paquette, Doug Rotek,
Here.
John Yackel.
Here, I do see Mr. Savitsky's.
Is he online?
Yeah,
That will give us a quorum then.
Okay, so he is virtual. Yep. There he's coming. Okay, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 of 14.
8.
Who's 8?
The jail, Sawyer County Jail Administrator, Mike, he counts
Oh, he counts?
according to Andy last month,
Okay, and what's the name?
because he is a jail administrator too.
Mike.
WOLLER.
Okay. All right, then you have 8.
Okay. If you would join me to the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we'll move on to certification of compliance with the open meetings law.
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. The meeting agenda, I think we cannot add, we missed a couple things, but I don't think we can add them at this point. Check with Andy. Vice chair, we don't have a vice chair anymore. We need to elect one, but I think that's gonna have to go to next month.
Yeah, that's not.
It wasn't on here, so. So we'll move on to public comment. Is there anybody from the
I
public?
I would like to just share with everybody that last week we had interviews for our jail lieutenant position. And we did offer and he accepted the jail lieutenant's position, Lieutenant Mike Waller with us here. So
Well, now he's still the official. We don't have to worry about or designate, right? He is still the official. Okay, great. Thank you very much and welcome to the committee on a permanent basis. Linda?
Good afternoon. Thank you for recognizing public comment. I wanted to inquire if this committee would have an interest in maybe tasking UW Extension with doing a survey of what the adjoining counties are doing with regard to law enforcement and schools and counties working together with youth and families on, I guess I'll use old terminology, AODA. I've long been involved with the Wisconsin alcohol policy work that used to be go through the UW Law School, and now I believe it's through the Medical College. And I misspoke at last week's Public Safety Committee meeting. I had asked that committee to consider providing an update on the programming that is used in Sawyer County schools. Sawyer County and their schools, primarily in the tribe, I believe, use DARE, which I had understood had long been more or less discounted as no longer being effective or evidence-based. And what I misspoke to was that Washburn County was using a program called Counteract. When I tried to do my follow-up homework, I found out that even prior to the pandemic, Counteract was dropped. And with these couple years of disruption in school years, programming for schools and the work between counties, Health and Human Services, and schools, it's been disruptive. And I think it would be meaningful to a number of committees if maybe UW Extension could pull together the programming that's being done in other counties. As I understand from the juvenile officer and school liaison, Mr. Olson in Washburn County, who's been in that position for a year and a half. There are 2 positions in Health and Human Services that are helping support work being done in the communities and the schools. And from a preventative and also family supporting thing, maybe this is a committee that can look into that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Linda. And I see that Judge Smith has joined us also, so. Any other public comments? Okay, minutes of the previous meeting, Andy?
We have a quorum, so I didn't take any action minutes.
You said because you said you were going to.
I mean, I took the who was in tennis, but there was no
Oh.
quorum, so I didn't take any, there's no minutes to take in the meeting.
Okay. All right, okay, so we don't have any minutes. Moving on then, membership and subcommittees. Bylaws, once again, we need 3/4 and we do not have 3/4 to change our bylaws. So, I guess that'll just have to go on next month again.
Yeah, could I just share though? So we have at least for discussion purposes this month, just to I'm gonna grab the screen mic. Oh. Just to go over what we've discussed, to make sure I started to draft, make the amendments to the bylaws based on the discussion. I just want to clarify a couple things. That way this needs to go out in with the meeting packet, so people know what we're discussing. As far as membership, increasing 2 people, is that what we have?
We were going to add a representative from public health, Sawyer County Public Health.
Okay. So I have it just listed as human services, but I can change that to public health.
I mean, it can be human services, I guess, maybe human services. Probably health and human services, yeah,
I have that in
okay.
health and human services representative, should be staff. Then I have, the other one I thought was the State of Wisconsin Public Defender's Office.
Public Defender's Office, that's the, is already on here. That's been Ryan, and Ryan
Okay.
was in that bad accident, and I don't know if we need to reach out to Ryan, if Ryan's back. I don't know, is he back now? So we just need to get him back in attending meetings again, yeah, because he attended on a regular basis.
I
all the
saw
time.
him yesterday by Zoom for the first time. and
Yeah. Good, glad to hear that. So we already have Ryan there.
Is there another position?
No.
Okay.
Because we have the DA, the county DA, right?
Right, I did, I guess in the list of membership, I added designee after jail administrator. Because that had been discussed, and have human services representative.
Right,
What
or
is that?
designee, right, yeah, that's what we're done, right, that way you're covered if that changes, that's correct, yes. Mhm.
So I'll just update it to 14 members rather than 15 and 13 voting members. So we'll send it out with the next
Right.
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Was there anything else then related to the bylaws?
I have a question, Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, the copy that I have, and this is just for a question, under membership, shows 14 members, and then the LCO tribal judge is actually added as K. Let's see, this one has, and you all have the same thing, I take it. The circuit court judge, the sheriff or designees, and then it seems to follow all the way down. Mine doesn't have or designee after jail administrator.
Correct. Now it's gonna get added as or designee, right?
And then, let's see, tribal government representative, state public defender representative, Wisconsin Department of Corrections. And then 2 and 2, and now you're adding the Sawyer County Health and Human Services representative, and I remember we talked about that. But are you going to put the LCO tribal judge on there or no?
Yeah, I might have grabbed the wrong copy to update.
Actually, because the copy we have does have the LCO
Yes.
tribal judge on it, right? Mhm.
Okay.
That was my question, thank you.
Would you rather read the Laputa Ray instead of the abbreviation? I think it should be the full, instead of the abbreviation. Okay, All right, anything else on the bylaws? All right, criminal justice coordinator, have a report for us.
Report for you. So currently we have 127 people on pretrial. We have broken those down into risk levels because that caseload is getting a little bit unmanageable for our case managers who do a phenomenal job. Our diversion cases are at 17. We have 4 diversion referrals pending. We have 10 people that have completed. And we have 21 who are eligible for diversion, but they haven't been in for their intakes yet. And that we talked about that in the past. That goes, you know, for different reasons. Sometimes they're referred and they don't show up, or sometimes they're, right now, they might just be scheduled out. So, that's where we're at with those.
We just did one, just before we came in here, so another one is on.
Yeah.
The diversion.
I actually scheduled.
Okay. Is
So,
that-
yeah,
So you're.
so he's not, no, he's not in here, but he will be, just because he just came in at like 11.
Okay.
Yeah. But so we do have one more that we will add after. So it's going well. Diversion is going very well. We do have 3 pending failed diversion cases, and those are for different reasons. And Judge, if you want to add anything to this, you can. But this is not, this just means that they're not successfully completing what's on their case plan. Ultimately, it's up to the judge and the district attorney's office if they want to continue them on diversion, if they feel, by recommendation of our case managers, if they feel that maybe there was just a slip up and that continuing would be beneficial, or if they just think that it's not working at all. And then we have 4 intakes pending that have been released from custody. That was as of last night. Now there are more from this morning. And then we have intakes pending for new bonds are at 51. So those mean that intake letters have gone out and people just either haven't responded or they're scheduled to do their intakes and they just haven't gotten it yet.
So I guess the question is, staff wise, this is still working staff wise, or?
We have a new pretrial specialist. Michelle started with us on Monday. So she doesn't do case management, but she will absorb a lot of the administrative duties that the case managers do. So that will be helpful. So that. Very happy. to have
Everybody wants somebody to
And we
do the
did not
paperwork.
steal her, we did not steal her from the sheriff or lieutenant.
Becky, could you repeat the title?
So I gather
Her
this is,
title is pretrial specialist.
and Judge Jackal, is there anything you'd like to add? Judge Jackal, I assume this is starting to work. It seems like we're getting some people through the program and saving some jail time, right?
It has, I mean, what I like about certainly the end of it when they succeed is, you know, at first it was like, well, do we need to have them come back into the courtroom and take up more time, even if it's 3 minutes? Why are we doing this? Well, you do it a few times with some successes, and if nothing else, I mean, it may have a benefit for them to say, hey, you know, I want to be acknowledged for successfully completing it, but it helps everybody that's in the system here to actually see somebody. You know, even the diversion program is, I mean, it's obviously not somebody with a high risk, high needs, but it's at least somebody who is into the drug scene, hasn't had an addiction problem, but maybe they're, you know, they've got a good support network. They're going to be able to, with some help, pull back. And it's, even if it's something on that level, it's still good to see a success and to have somebody say something positive and to have, you know, and have everybody else in the courtroom, because it's usually on a busy Tuesday, see that and know that that's possible for them. So
And that's nice that they have the option that they can try to participate, right?
it is, I mean, it's, I think we've had a couple that have failed, and, you know, it's not like it's probation where, all right, you failed, now you're gonna go to prison. No, it's, okay, they failed on this. So that means their supervision needs to be a little bit higher, so, if they're gonna go, yeah, so all we do is go back to where we are, they enter the conviction, and then generally on that kind of level of crime anyway, they're gonna get probation, so it's not like now their whole life is destroyed, it's just, well, okay, this first, kind of entry level, treatment, you probably need a little bit more supervision, a little bit more help, and then so they have to go in that,
So can I ask one question? How does the Department of Corrections tie into this process, or do you guys tie?
Really don't, because we are post-conviction.
Okay, all right.
So we are-
Okay. You're on the other
Yeah.
side. Okay.
Because that's the benefit of the diversion is that we take their plea, find them guilty, but direct the court not to enter the judgment, and then we hold it over for 6 months or 9 months, and then they come back. If they fail, then we enter
Then it goes back.
conviction, and then at that point, it would be, okay, they're placed on probation, and then it's
There could be, I mean, there are people who have been sentenced to probation on a case and then have an active pending case. So we do sometimes have mutual clients, just different.
Sure. All right, thank you.
Pieces
Yeah.
we're supervising.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? And I guess related to the jail, I know we're all female inmates are being shipped out of county now. Is that correct? Did that change?
The end of this week.
The end of this week, okay. And are we full? Is this, are you seeing, I mean, I know it's only 10 or 15 or whatever, I mean. Are you starting to see any kind of impact in terms of reduction in the jail population?
It's been pretty consistent at 80 to 100 here.
Okay.
You know, the peaks and valleys are between 80 and 100,
Mhm.
usually 85 and 100. What, I think last week we were 91 on Thursday.
And capacity is,
What's that?
what's capacity?
104. If it means classification, which rarely happens, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. What can you currently, because of staffing, can you still take on for, or is that because staff you can't?
No, we cannot, because we don't have the 2 day jailers to support us with the double bunking.
Kathy, I guess we can, just so we get it on, we were approved, we talked about our pre-planning budget for TAB, our pre-planning grant, and we were approved to apply for the entire amount that we submitted our pre-planning grant application for, which is due November 2nd. Right. So, Andy and Mike and I met earlier this week, and our grant is pretty much intact. We just have to tweak it a little bit here and there.
And I think you were able to pick up some additional money for positions too.
More money than we originally anticipated, but yeah, so it'll be like a long-term number. So initially, when we get those funds, we'll be able to hire a drug court or a treatment court coordinator.
That was what we were talking about, but yes. Okay, great. Okay,
That's our goal.
that's cool. Yes. Great. I guess then if there's no other questions, we'll move on to public health this year. And they were gonna kind of give us a little update and presentation on the community needs and opioid. Yes.
Okay, so Joyce and Jeff have been working on kind of an analysis over the last number of months. So in just trying to, we have some gaps that really have kind of bubbled up to the surface. But I thought I'd let them just kind of give a little like overview of who all they've kind of met with and kind of gone back and forth, and then we can talk about where we see some of the gaps. And where some of where we need to maybe look at what we spend those funds.
So we really, when this came down, knowing this happened, we reached out to a majority of the agencies and entities in Sawyer County. We were from law enforcement to each of those, so city, county, tribal, and even towns. We met with all the heads there. We met with all the heads of all our schools in Sawyer County. with that specifically being winter LCO and Hayward, due to the private schools, the big ones. We met anywhere from mental health to AOTA to Justice Point to corrections to all the health entities within Sawyer County, really to see and to give us an overview of when it comes to substance misuse or abuse and mental health, what services can you provide? Just to give us a better understanding of what's happening in our county, and then also go, okay, where are the gaps? Where are they missing? We have quite a list. I just want to give you an overview of all the main entities we've met with. So, and then youth justice. One of the biggest gaps we have found that you probably all are well aware of is with, especially when it comes to adolescents and youth, is one of the biggest gaps that we have seen. It's a very gray and sticky area. That's one of them. There's many more. But those are the main entities that we met with. So we can get a better understanding of going, hey, we do have services to see is there where we could bridge the gaps where one entity might not know another entity is already doing the same service they are. That is another thing we have found is a lot of entities are doing a really good job, but not realizing somebody else is already doing that as well, or they're wanting to do something, but somebody else is doing this. So we're looking at bridging those, taking entities out of silos and bringing that together. Then obviously looking at what are we looking at. So we do have a few entities we still need to talk with. Obviously it's a big task to take on, so we're slowly working on that. But
One of the areas that everybody knows, and there's not a real quick fix for it, is there just isn't enough treatment providers. There's not enough therapists, and especially for youth. It's very difficult for parents to find someone to treat their child that isn't to drive all the way to Eau Claire or La Crosse or even further south. And there just isn't a quick fix for that. But it's very tough for kids. We've heard that from the schools that have, children who are hurting themselves, doing things, and there's just no place for them to go. And now we just found out, I think earlier this month, the main place in Eau Claire is actually closing. So I'm not sure where they're going to go then. So it's a major gap for kids. We also found that, the marijuana issue is a very confusing issue. So it's not taken very seriously with youth, especially. It's seen more as, well, it's just marijuana. And from other people we've spoken to, there's other people who believe that is the perfect time to actually step in and do something to pull them back from that culture. But it doesn't seem to be an issue taken real seriously. So we are doing a vaping panel in education. There's a huge vaping problem in the schools, including THC in those vapes that Jess has set up.
So that's one of the things doing the gap analysis we've already started to work on with the schools and law enforcement and American Lung to actually start working on that. Another thing we've found is with working with the schools is actual drug education in the schools. There has been it throughout the years, but talking with the schools, looking at can we bring something back that might have been there that was working that's no longer there. So looking at what that looks like. I had one other thing I was going to say. Oh, the other thing we did find too with the adult population is one of the things we saw that in other communities that have worked surrounding is peer recovery. So obviously when it comes to opioid and mental health, that is a huge, there isn't one quick solution, and everybody has, this is what they should think should be done, which is great. But we did find our community does not have peer recovery, which could be a huge benefit to help those that are in need. So
We did make contact with LCO, has a group out there that's just starting a whole peer recovery training process. And so we're hoping to stay in contact with them to see how that goes and how exactly they manage to put it all together and actually get people to be peer recovery support for people. And then we also had when you're talking about the drug side of it, we did not hear, maybe good news, we did not hear a lot about other drugs with youth.
except from people like first responders. So when you talk to the schools, they really aren't seeing a lot of other drug usage, that they're catching in the schools. But then when we talk to first responders, they're mentioning there's quite a bit of meth with youth. But we're just not seeing it anywhere else, whether it's in youth justice or in the schools, so there's a real disconnect there that we're not really sure why that is.
So one of the things that you guys are thinking we need to bring back is the youth survey, make sure that we're.
So we did, just a recap, we did a countywide survey back in 2018 at all schools, which are LCO and Hayward Middle through High. It was basically mandatory assembly. They had to, and that's when the opioid, everything kind of hit the fan, and that's when you saw the stuff come out from the state on opioids. So we went in schools and did a survey with them that went through what they're seeing in the schools, and then also at the end we asked what they felt would help in the county. What do they see as missing from their perspective? So granted, it was done in 18. So one of the things we would love to do, because they gave some great insight, because they don't have filters, and we wanted them to be honest, which they were. But to be able to do another one with them now, since the pandemic, we've seen a lot of things increase with students. We talked about vaping, which might not seem like a big thing, but if you talk to the schools, their vaping has drastically increased, and especially with THC pods in them. So looking at possibly going and doing that, but also not with just this adolescents, but also community from a perspective of what they see and what they could see as really helpful.
Did you say that was a mandatory survey back in 18?
Mandatory assembly.
Assembly. So if you were at the assembly.
To do the survey.
No.
You said it was that they were truthful. I mean, well, no, it's not mandatory, but.
Right. So no, and it
Right.
was told, everybody got the same survey. You didn't put your name or anything on that, so they knew that it would not correct them. So yeah, but yeah. If you weren't at the assembly, obviously you didn't do the survey. So yes.
One of the concerns I have when you talk about the different perspectives or concerns, EMS,
Yeah.
what they see versus schools, is I know dealing with our truancy issues,
Yes.
a lot of our families that have a lot of involvement with meth, heroin, and marijuana have some of the worst truancy issues. And we have quite a few kids who have not been in school all year. And I would bet those are the surveys that don't reach those kids.
Right.
And our EMS services are having contact with those kids and their family members because of the issues they're having. So
Right.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there was some correlation there.
Between the two of them. Yeah.
What is the recourse or whatever for that? For these kids that are absent, what can we do or what are we doing? To try to, get them.
At this point, we're issuing citations to the parents as well. The question is, how effective is that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're limited on what we can do.
Oh, that's it, just.
Do they come to the district court then?
And Judge Slender, Judge Slender was the tribal judge. I know that, and even as a commissioner, he was dealing with the truancy matters. I think you can kind of combine the LCO at some point in Surrey County, but I mean, it's question resources. I mean, right now it's how do we deal with it? Because by the time the school, they get from the school to the circuit court, all right, well, the schools already have them. And so, you take 15 citations and then you talk with them and you find out about why they're missing school. And you realize, well, mom or dad or grandma's sitting there, they already have meth charges, open criminal cases. Well, I don't know how many times we've taken people into custody because parent shows up with the kid if they do, and then once, oh, you have an open warrant. So take that. And so right now it's a question of, well, are we dealing with the criminal felony matters if people bring drugs in, or do we do the citation? So those are, we need to have a commissioner, or when the second judge started, that's something that we'll we'll be able to start addressing, but same question everywhere else. When the school can't deal with them, and then so, well, we're gonna issue a citation, so now you're gonna go to the court. Okay, so a truant kid who, needs services, it's like, well, okay, is Health and Human Services here? Is this the GIPS matter, Juvenile Need Protection and Services? You refer it, and then you never, sometimes you hear things, sometimes you don't hear back. So it's, what effective tools do you have? Days for dollars, meaning, okay, I'm gonna impose a citation against you, and if you can have a perfect attendance for the next 3 months, that eats away at your citation and you can get it down to 0. And then
Didn't
they sometimes
Public
don't.
health, didn't you use, you had, well, Daydream for a while worked with juveniles, who's doing juveniles, is it Carla?
Carla is under Carla, so they have a new youth justice worker.
Okay,
She's new, she came from another county, but she started in spring of this year.
okay.
Yeah, she came from
Because
Pierce.
they were dealing in Health and Human Services with those truancy issues. I mean, they were not from the law enforcement, but contacting them, dealing with them too. So is that possible that that new person is going to be able to start to address that issue? Or
I
don't know what.
don't know, I can't speak for her. No, but I will concur what you say. I know with talking with the schools, when school started this year, normally they get a couple weeks, and this week it was starting day 1 for them. And with the little guy, yeah.
So if you don't have a commissioner, you don't have Mr. Slender, so who is addressing it first?
You're just writing citations.
Yeah, they write citations, and then if they come in and they dispute it, then it'll get set for a hearing, and they don't dispute it.
And it did used to go through, I know, because Dave and Daydream worked a lot with truancy issues and we used to even get statistics on it every meeting, how many truancies and so they were addressing them before actually they were going to the court system, in other words. So that was like the first stop, and then if they couldn't resolve it or whatever, then they were sending them forward with recommendations to the court or whatever. So now we're kind of working in reverse, right?
I'm not sure. I think that the school is reaching out to them prior, but it's probably a combination.
Right, well, and a combination of obviously positions have been combined again, and those positions that were there for specific things aren't there anymore, right? So.
And Sheriff, did some of that change with COVID too? Because I know we were tracking and calling the schools for these kids need to be out during this amount of days. And from talking to the schools, I just know there was a lot of juggling going on, and the truancy issue was really hard to
Address.
Yeah.
Stay on top of.
Yeah.
Yeah. With virtual
Yeah.
and everything else, it was difficult.
So I think this year is the year that they're really trying to hone that in on that.
Right.
I don't know the nitty-gritty details, but I think there's ways other counties have done to rewrite their truancy ordinance to keep it out of the court, to have a truancy court and get the schools more involved in that on a daily basis with the juvenile justice workers.
I think we have some excellent teamwork within the county here with, the court, the DA's office, law enforcement, and the other players here. But again, the one thing that I'm adamant about is the missing link here is we need CPS, Carla, and that Health and Human Services Division actively involved here, because not only, that's our youth. And what happens during their youth, if they stay in this community, is with us forever. And it affects our criminal justice system for decades. And that behavior issue of concern, I would really like to see them actively involved.
Well, we did talk about, when we talked about membership, we did talk about adding specific instead of just open to actually have that person be added. Additional person, and that's still possible because obviously we have not approved the new bylaws.
Are you still on Health and Human Services Committee?
I'm
And for whatever reason, it's been noticeable since I've been here that there's not human services involvement in the CJCC. I think that's fairly common because there is such strong connections either in the youth end or on the mental health side. And maybe it's a bigger look at our bylaws, because we already have a problem having forums, maybe. we amend
That's the
our
trouble, the
bylaws.
bigger you get, the worse it gets.
I mean, maybe we need to talk about, these are the voting members, but these are also the people who are expected to be here from a staff side.
And I think that's what we talked about, instead of adding specifically that position, that you would have the ability to be at the meetings, right? And, I'm open to whatever way the committee wants to go on it. If they want to specifically make it a position, as a member, or if they want to just leave it with Health and Human Services and with the understanding that that person will be present, at their meetings, because it is a key piece, right?
I don't want to say the walls talk, but the walls talk, and there might be reasons that HHS was left off of CDCC years ago. But I think it's time to.
I think there's been a lot of effort to get the two entities to come together, right?
Yeah, I think we spoke about them coming on quite a bit, and I like Andy's idea of possibly, voting members and then the people that you expect to be there.
Do you think that's possible? I mean, that it's.
Staffing and.
Yeah.
getting-
You do that. That's.
And I think having the meetings are now kind of set.
Yes, they are set to say, right, makes the
Yeah.
scheduling easier.
Yep, and then we'll see.
But maybe it would be advantageous to add them as a voting member, because if they are staff and they're in the building, then we're more likely to get them to come always, right? Like I said, it's up to the committee, just,
I just, from the staff perspective.
Yeah. Well, in reality, there's not a whole lot that we actually vote upon here.
no, we don't. We only can make recommendations. I mean, it's just kind of to keep things rolling and keep, yeah. Okay. But yeah, we can get somebody to come on a regular basis. I think that'd be wonderful. That's a big piece that we really do need. Just like you guys being here today, we really appreciate the work you do and appreciate stepping up and willing to become a part of this, right? Yes. So, yeah. Okay, anything else?
Well, I think the other final piece that we've really seen is really the transitional planning, housing issues, either post-care or post-jail. And what does that look like? And probably that would be a good place for investment. I did see that some of the opioid dollars may be transitioned over to jails to be able to write for grants. And I don't know if it was you were specifically going to get block money or have to write for the grant, and I don't know if you've seen it yet. So I'll get in touch with you guys when I see something, but we should watch for that, because I think that those monies could be towards social work and different things to help with that transitional planning. So that's kind of the final piece.
And I know Judge Smith has talked a lot about the need for transitional, once you get out of jail, where are you gonna go, how are you gonna, right, that
Those questions are answered, yeah.
huge problem, right?
Those are asked all the time in the court system. When you have somebody that's been in jail for 30 or 120 days, and they're like, I'm ready, I'm clear. I'm getting out and I'm ready to do what I need to do. So I started asking them, so what's your plan? Where are you gonna go? I'm gonna go home. Do you have any drug users at home? Well, my brother is one. What neighborhood do you live in? You live in Winter, Hayward, LCO, what settlement? And like, well, so everyone knows that you're drug addicts. There are other drug addicts in the community. It's
No
throwing
transportation,
them
no
to
housing.
the wolves. It's throwing people out to the
Right.
wolves
It is.
that are very vulnerable.
Well, and it does seem like we keep coming back to this every time we have a discussion of what we should be using our opioid settlement money for. This seems to be a really reoccurring thing with everybody that
So
we
we're
talk
living
to.
this coming through the wolves.
Right. So, that's something I think, we need to continue to look at. Because that's definitely a big issue, and just having somebody be able to plan that, like you're talking about, Judge, that I don't know if it would fall on you guys to plan that, or just having a person like after jail plan, you know what I mean? So that these are the resources that are out there, if you need transportation, this is here. we can get you into a housing, you know, for so many months here. Here's a list of employers that would be willing to hire you or look at you. I mean, just to have that whole complete package. So when somebody walks out the door, somebody sat down and met with them and gone over, here, this is, you know, how we can get you back into the community, right?
That's the jail social worker piece. Essentially a release planner.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yes. Mhm. Yeah.
Can I speak to that? Just
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that is our so prison releases, obviously that is a social worker, institution social worker's role. And unfortunately, we do have people releasing back to Sawyer County, homeless often. And then, you know, I get those phone calls, why are you allowing this to happen? And there isn't anything for housing. And then, you know, we have funds, the Department of Corrections have funds, but local hotels won't take our monies, because it's touristy, right? They don't want the bad review that somebody, I mean, there are hotels that do.
That's probably not where you want them.
That's not where you want them to be. From what we hear, right, there's been issues with that because, yes, that's.
So that is, I mean, I'm just like, you know, we do have money, we will fund, you know, rent, but there's just, I've spent hours on the phone with landlords and trying to find housing. We have TLPs out of county, that we do send people to if they have openings, but then for policy, they have to return here. So then it's just the same, because another county doesn't want our client or prison release, so they go there temporarily, so it's not an ideal situation. So that is one of the largest barriers that I have noticed since I've been in Sawyer County.
That sounds like this is where we're going, because this has been ongoing. When we were having small work groups, when we were talking about the services, we were definitely confirming it. And even people with jobs who were living in the county who haven't been in jail or anywhere cannot find a place to live, right? So.
I think the county really has to look at a treatment center, and that could possibly incorporate it right in that as they're getting their treatment and, you know, they're going to the jail and all that, then they could possibly, I guess, they work that in the treatment center.
So what's going on with Sawyer County Housing Authority?
Good question.
Are they a piece that we're missing here?
I think that this is where money needs to be spent and brought in.
That's what I'm thinking too. I don't know how many units or whatever, but I mean that they were funded by the county to some degree at some point. There was a loan fund that went, I don't remember all the details.
They're receiving some of the ARPA funds from the county to leverage new units that should be underrated. I don't remember how many units it is.
So somehow that would be an ideal source to tap into in connection, because they're gonna have the units, and if we can somehow get 5 of those units or 4 of those, I mean, something, a block of something, so that we would have a starting place to do something.
I think that a big problem there is that you can't have a drug conviction
In order to go in there.
and the majority of the people we work with are drug convictions.
And is that because of the funding?
I think it's federal funding.
Funding source, okay. So that there would have to be a way that you separate the housing. From that. It probably is gonna take, you know, if we're gonna go down this route, then the money needs to be spent. It's probably time to have a work group that really dives into that. To actually make some inroads on it.
I think that would make sense. I mean, to maybe get somebody from Sawyer County Housing and whatever, to try to start to tackle this. Obviously, it would be a valuable asset, because you know how much money, there's money there. But you know there's money. I mean, that's the sad part. We know there's money,
There's money on that and.
but not on the other end, right? Yeah.
I know that, I've only been in Sawyer for a year, but I know that I've questioned, you know, what do we have to do to get a TLP? And, I know the Department of Corrections, the supervisor before me, Jeff, there was a property, and there was, a talk about the department purchasing one, and I don't know, I never found out why it didn't happen. But I don't know if it was residents locally were not, didn't want this next to them. I'm not sure. Sheriff, maybe you remember those conversations or
Yeah,
I,
I'm not certain of the details there.
okay. I know that the department was going to purchase a building in Sawyer County and
Thank you for coming.
it was for a transitional living. Well, I guess I don't want to put that on the
Right,
record.
'cause you
I'm
don't know
not
for
sure.
sure.
'Cause
Right,
CLP
right.
is-
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was just, because the state can do emergency housing, which is basically we just could buy a house and use our funds to put them there. TLPs are staffed and they have to have, like, whoever knows more about this, they have to have checkers, they have certain, requirements to it. So I don't know exactly if it was TLP or emergency housing, but I know that it fell through. And I don't know all those details because that was before Katie, but I think that it was a talk.
Yeah, so this isn't health service, but I used to work for the Department of Corrections in Minnesota. And what Minnesota does is they got funding, I believe, through grants. And they do purchase houses that are usually on the outside edge of towns. And they also buy bicycles. And you can have however many bedrooms are in there, it's not staffed. But however many bedrooms are in there, then they have their main living area and kitchen. And they have them all over the state. So they have one person that all her job is to go to different areas and try to find a house to buy. And then the offenders being housed there do pay a nominal rent. But it gives them a place to start. And they don't usually have vehicles or any of that, but that's why they come up with bicycles, and they even have like winter type bicycles so they can ride, and it sounds very similar to what was in the works. So they somehow found funding, and I mean, there's numerous. I bet you there's 15, 20 houses in Minnesota that they purchased to do that type of housing.
Not supervised anyway.
No,
No,
No.
and that's what we would be willing to do. And that's what I have spoken to local landlords about, is if you're willing to buy a house, all we really ask for is some beds and some clean linens.
Yeah.
And
As not ideal as that sounds, Mark, they are on supervision.
Yeah, an agent is coming.
That's right, just because nobody's on the
Yeah.
premise doesn't mean the
Right.
person still is on. Right, yeah, no, thank you.
Often they get seen more than somebody who
Yeah.
is, because you have so many different agents coming in for 5 different people or whatever, they're actually being seen more than
And
just.
I think I know that concern comes also, you're gonna put a bunch of convicted felons in one house, well, and they live with family. That are convicted felons as well. So, at least we all know that they're there, they're supposed to be.
Well, most of these houses, not all of them, but most of these houses were for level 3 sex offenders being released. Because we couldn't find
Find
places,
places in.
and it was pretty effective.
They're the hardest obstacle.
Yes.
Even
We have a lot of homeless sex offenders.
Mhm.
There's nowhere will take them.
Yeah. So, sorry.
No.
Very good
it-
information.
It's good information, and I think we kind of are establishing where we want to go with this, I mean, in terms of looking into it. So. I guess anything else, I mean, do we want to try to look at forming some type of work group and kind of moving forward with our priority being getting the housing or the transition in place? I mean, we can only make I mean, the county hasn't decided what to do with their money yet. So we could make a recommendation or whatever that they save that money or earmark it for, to be used for this type of programming like we're talking about. Whether it's buying a house or working with the Department of Corrections to buy, they're gonna have funding too available, or.
Looks like whomever is gonna make the decision on where that money goes needs assistance.
Yeah, and I think that it's becoming pretty evident to this committee that or mental health. We talked about mental health in jail. We talked about actually being able to hire a physician to address mental health in the jail, because you guys only have 8 hours a week or some ridiculous thing for 100 inmates. I mean, that doesn't go very far. So, I mean, that was a real area of concern also. Well, obviously, that's the area concerned in the whole county.
Yeah.
You know, because you're finding that you don't have any youth counselors, you don't have any, there's no place to go.
They just can't hire anyone.
There's no.
People. Yeah, and we really need to really watch for those dollars, see how they're coming down to the state too, because that could really help. with
We
the
could
jail.
leverage some more additional
Yeah.
money.
Have they signed off on that yet? I mean, the state's plan was held up. to
The
try to
state
finance.
plan was held up, and then I think that they transferred that money to be sent to the jail, and I think that passed, but I have not gone back in to see. But yeah,
I think you're right, though. I haven't looked at it lately either, but I do think
we
you're
should
correct.
validate that. So
We could
I can
get some additional money.
But I just don't know if they did it as you have to apply or if the jail's on it.
Something to look into.
Okay, does anybody have anything else? Yes.
Just a little follow-up information regarding our females leaving here towards the end of the week. I want to mention that Barron County has been great to work with. Fortunately, they're willing to take all of our females, the advantage to that. Becky's done an excellent job working with them, reaching out as well as with us to continue our programming. And Huber issues and concerns that way. We don't currently have anybody, but we may have one coming up here. And through the EM program and otherwise here, we want to do everything we can to maintain that program and taking care of them and keeping them on track.
That's a good point, because you're right, once they're out of county, that makes everything logistically more difficult. Doesn't it?
They've been phenomenal about working with us.
Great. I hear that. Okay, any items for next month's agenda? We have to have the election of a vice chairperson. We'll put the bylaws back on there again. I think I would like, if possible, to have a standing committee report from Health and Human Services. Is that possible? That'd be great. Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Just like we've got Justice Point has kind of a standing report, so that'd be perfect.
And might I add, anytime you can send something by digital beforehand, it's helps greatly with the packet. Because then they can get information to study before the actual presentation.
And I guess back to the one public comment that we did have from Linda was about getting UW Extension to work with law enforcement to do some type of programming in the schools. And at this point, is there anything going on or not really? I mean, we've had 2 years of just
We do.
chaos, basically, yeah.
I mean, I have the utmost respect for her opinion, but I am a strong supporter of DARE. We do teach DARE in winter, and we're looking at expanding it in Hayward. Amber Elmorby, our new truancy officer, took over when Jeff Haney retired. He went to DARE school this summer, and the DARE program just changed all the curriculum again. It's been about every 15, 20 years they change their curriculum. So it's up to date. It is evidence-based. And there is a lot of work and effort at all levels put behind it. So we are expanding that hopefully in Hayward. I've already met with Rhonda Lee, the intermediate school principal, and she is very open with it. And it's been about 10 years since it's been taught in Hayward. I was the last DARE officer there.
So is there other curriculums available? I mean, I assume there's
There's-
probably 100 of them out there, right?
There's a lot of different programs, there is. But it's also very expensive and you have to, everybody does best at what they like to do, and to have somebody cross-trained in different programs and everything. And we're already on track with DARE. I mean, to shift gears is very difficult at this point.
Would you want that
You
as
do
an
have
update,
the
a DARE update on the agenda?
No, I really think it does belong back to
Yes.
public safety, to be honest.
It's
Oh,
done.
okay. Public safety is the one who should be looking at what type of programming in connection with Health and Human Services. There again, we have two entities that aren't necessarily connecting. I'm just saying I'd like to see public safety be connecting with Health and Human Services to kind of see what their opinion of what might be, like that.
And I think every dollar spent in education goes a lot further than the dollars we spend in rehabilitation.
Absolutely, regardless of what, like,
The additional piece that. we're looking at.
The one, right, we didn't talk about that, and Sheriff, you're aware of this, we met with you, as well as what we're looking at doing is an assembly for all three schools. Winter, LCO and Hayward, possibly all the way 4th grade up through 12th grade of drug education in assembly, so not going in each class. Schools may make it mandatory, it's also one of those, kids not there, they're not there, but definitely doing it sooner rather than later, actually having a drug officer going in and doing the education with the students. So that is one of the things from the original survey that was done, is they want the actual facts. So that is one of the things we are currently working on. And then also with the component of law enforcement, bringing in one of our local physicians to also give the medical piece to it. So they get both aspects, the law enforcement side and what's actually going on in our community, but also the medical side. Because it is a huge issue, and if we're going to stop heading going forward, as the sheriff said, we do have to start with our adolescents because it's getting harder and harder for them. So,
well, and I think having somebody from the medical community, not to put any disrespect, but a lot of point, parents have talked badly about police officers, this, don't believe this, whatever. So having another perspective on it from a different point of view, I think gives it a balance.
it's a joint thing.
Yeah, right. So they can see that, right? Yeah, I think that's excellent. Yeah.
I think it's gonna expand knowledge and sometimes different kids are looking for different answers.
Right.
To different questions.
That's
And those other professionals can answer their questions better than we can.
That's right.
Yeah, it's really a joint thing, so.
And I wanted, number one thing on the survey that the kids said is they want to know what it does to their body.
See, and that's more back to a doctor, right?
So yeah, we did meet with law enforcement.
Well, there's specific pictures in the training of what it does to your.
So,
And we're supportive and we'll do anything we can.
Yeah.
They're a great team to work with there and
all right, anything else for next month then? Katie, do you think you can get a little more information on? You can go dive back into what not what happened, but maybe just what funding might be available, or if they would buy a house, or what,
It would be. So it would probably be beneficial if I had reached, so we have a purchasing person, who handles like the contracts and bids and knows the budget. I don't know my office's budget, not per se the state. And so I could reach out to her. She's new in her position, so I'm not sure, but I'll reach out to her.
That'd be great. So maybe put that on just a little update of possible housing through, Department of Corrections, right? Kind of just to see, it's a great place if she's gonna be new, you guys can make it. I would appreciate that. Okay, I guess nothing else. It's 1 o'clock. We're gonna adjourn. So thank you, everybody, for coming.